The 10 Ites in the Bible, who they were and why they matter. Welcome to my channel God's Care Jesus. Today's God's message for you. When the Lord, your God, brings you into the land, you are entering to possess and drives out before you many nations: Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, 7 nations larger and stronger than you. And when the Lord your God has delivered them over to you and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally. Make no treaty with them, and show them no mercy. Deuteronomy 7:1-2. In the verse above, Moses conveys God's instructions to the Israelites as they prepared to enter the promised land. But who exactly are these ites that God commanded to be removed? And what role did they play in Israel's journey? The many ites in the Bible. Throughout the Bible, there are roughly 193 references to these ites. They represent different tribes and groups who encountered the Israelites over time. Learning about who these groups were and why they were significant provides a better understanding of the biblical narrative and the conflicts that influenced Israel's history. The meaning of the suffix ites. Before we dive even deeper, let us first find out what the suffix ites means. In biblical terms, the suffix ites simply denotes a group of people or descendants of a particular ancestor or region. It was used to identify different tribes, clans, or nations, such as the Hittites or Canaanites. The suffix helped distinguish these groups from others, often indicating their cultural or geographic origin. In the context of Scripture, the ites frequently represented nations that played significant roles in Israel's journey to the Promised Land, often standing as opponents to God's chosen people. In this article, we'll take a look at 10 of the most prominent ites, especially those found in the verse above, and explore their role in key biblical events. Amalekites. The Amalekites were a nomadic group known for their hostility toward Israel. They were among the first to attack the Israelites after their departure from Egypt. Due to their unprovoked aggression, God declared that he would erase their memory. One of their most notable defeats is recounted in Exodus 17:8-16, where Moses famously held up his hands while Joshua led the Israelites to victory. The Amalekites struck Israel when they were at their weakest and most vulnerable. This shows how spiritual attacks can happen during our lowest moments. It's a reminder for us to lean on God's strength and seek the support of those around us during these challenging times. Canaanites. The Canaanites, a prominent group mentioned in the Old Testament, were descendants of Canaan, Noah's grandson, and resided in the land that later became part of Israel's inheritance. Known for their strong cities and rich culture, the Canaanites also practiced pagan rituals, including idol worship and even child sacrifice. This is one reason why God instructed the Israelites to remove them from the land. It's because they posed a real spiritual threat to the faith of Israel. They represent the moral and spiritual challenges that Israel faced in the Promised Land. Despite their physical strength and established presence, their practices conflicted with God's laws. Israel was tasked not only with defeating them, but also avoiding the temptation to adopt their ways. Their battle with the Canaanites serves as a warning about how the surrounding culture can impact faith if one isn't cautious. Subscribe my channel for more videos, share it with friends. Let's continue with the video. Hittites. Known for their military strength and mastery of ironworking, the Hittites were a formidable and influential group. Their ability to work with iron earned them a considerable advantage during warfare. Though they weren't always in direct conflict with Israel, they feature in key biblical narratives. One notable example is Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, who was a Hittite. His story, especially his involvement with King David, shows the complex interactions Israel had with its surrounding nations. The Hittites symbolized worldly power and influence, but even with those characteristics, they were not able to stop God's plan for Israel. This is a testament that even the most powerful nations are subject to God's will, and that relying on human or military strength is no substitute for faith in God. Girgashites. The Girgashites are one of the lesser-known groups among the Ites. They are mentioned as part of the 7 nations living in the land of Canaan, whom the Israelites were commanded to drive out. Though there isn't much detail given about them specifically, the fact that they were included in the list of nations shows that they, too, were part of the cultural and spiritual opposition the Israelites faced. Even though the Girgashites might seem insignificant compared to the other Ites in the Bible, their role is symbolic of the many smaller yet persistent obstacles in our own spiritual journey. They remind us that not every challenge or temptation is large and obvious. Some are quiet but still need to be confronted and overcome. The Girgashites' presence teaches us that no matter how insignificant a threat may seem, it can still hinder our progress if left unchecked. Amorites. The Amorites were a powerful, warlike people who lived in the hill country and posed a significant threat to Israel's conquest of the Promised Land. Their name frequently appears in battles, such as the one where Joshua famously commanded the sun to stand still. The Amorites were deeply entrenched in the region and among Israel's most persistent opponents. Their strongholds had to be overcome for Israel to fully possess the land. The major battles we face in life, those challenges that seem too big or too ingrained to defeat, are similar to the role the Amorites played in the fate of Israel. They represent the obstacles that take time and persistence to overcome. For the Israelites, the Amorites stood in the way of their inheritance, and overcoming them required faith in God's power. In the same way, the Amorites in our lives can represent those ongoing challenges that may seem overwhelming yet are conquerable with God's guidance. Perizzites. The Perizzites were a smaller, rural group living in villages scattered across Canaan. Their lifestyle was deeply rooted in pagan practices, which God wanted the Israelites to avoid or demolish altogether. Although they may not have been as powerful as the other Ites, like the Hittites or Amorites, their influence was still considered dangerous. The Perizzites remind us that not all challenges come from powerful armies or rulers. Often, the most significant threats are subtle and come from the everyday influences surrounding us. Israel had to remain as vigilant of the Perizzites as they were with stronger nations, because it was often the smaller, unnoticed influences that led to their downfall. Similarly, we need to be mindful of the small things that can slowly pull us away from our faith. Hivites. The Hivites, despite not being a powerful nation, were able to secure their place among the Israelites through manipulation. They were known for being cunning and deceitful. A well-known example is the Gibeonite deception found in Joshua 9. The Gibeonites were a specific group of Hivites who cleverly tricked Israel into making a peace treaty by posing as travelers from a far-off land. Once their deception was discovered, the Israelites upheld the treaty, but made the Gibeonites servants to Israel, working as woodcutters and water carriers for the tabernacle. This story emphasizes the value of discernment and the importance of seeking God's wisdom in every decision. Subtle forms of deception can easily slip by if we lack faith and aren't careful. The Hivites represent the need for spiritual vigilance and trusting God's guidance in all situations. Jebusites. The Jebusites used to have control over Jerusalem before King David captured it. They were one of the last groups to fall during Israel's conquest of Canaan. Their stronghold, Jerusalem, held both spiritual and geographic importance. When David finally captured it, Jerusalem became the political and spiritual center of Israel. We would later know it as a city associated with the presence of God through the temple. In life, we often encounter challenges that require patience and perseverance. They can really test our strength and commitment and push us to grow in ways we might not expect. Just like how the Jebusites held on to Jerusalem for a long time, we might find ourselves facing situations that feel stubborn and unchangeable. Their eventual defeat and Jerusalem's rise as Israel's center of worship remind us that God's timing is always perfect and no obstacle, however deeply rooted, can resist His will. Moabites. The Moabites had a complex relationship with Israel. While they were sometimes hostile, there were also moments of connection. We can see this in the story of Ruth. She's probably the most famous Moabite in the Bible's history, and she later became part of King David's lineage. However, the Moabites often led Israel astray into idolatry and immorality, as seen in the incident at Baal Peor, where Moabite women lured Israel into worshiping false gods. The Moabites remind us that our greatest challenges can arise not just from clear enemies, but also from those close to us. Their history with Israel was marked by both conflict and connection, highlighting the risks of compromising our faith. Yet, the story of Ruth illustrates that even within complicated relationships, God can weave His redemptive plan. Edomites. The Edomites were descendants of Esau, the twin brother of Jacob. Their significance in biblical history stems from their familial ties to the Israelites and the complex relationship that ensued. They initially had a close connection with the Israelites, as both groups shared a common ancestry. However, as the Israelites journeyed to the Promised Land, tensions grew. The Edomites often opposed the Israelites, refusing them passage through their land during the Exodus, which led to a legacy of animosity. The Edomites worshipped different gods and practiced cultural customs that often contradicted those of the Israelites, further fueling the divide. Today, the Edomites represent the struggles of conflict and division that can arise within families and communities. Their history reminds us how unresolved conflicts can lead to enduring animosities that affect generations. Lessons from the Ites. God places people in our lives either to teach us valuable lessons or to challenge us to grow spiritually and develop resilience. The stories of the Ites serve as profound reminders of this truth.